got a license to talk.
Shocking. Positively shocking.
And the words are for your ears only.
I think you got the point.
Welcome to The Words Are Not Enough.
On episode 19 of The Words Are Not Enough, it's a Bond 25 breaking news extravaganza as we dive into the big news drop from Variety, learn who will be defining the look of Bond 25, and Griffin shares an exclusive interview with Hugo Weaving. All this and more coming your way now.
Yeah, baby! Yeah.
What is up, everyone, and welcome back to The Words Are Not Enough. This is our James Bond podcast where we discuss the films, the lore, the books, the games, and all that shit, the news pertaining to Bond 25, especially in today's episode. I am one of your hosts, Griffin 008 Schiller.
And I am Brody 005 Saravelli.
Yeah, and this is a little bit of an emergency breaking news episode, right? Is that what we're calling it?
I think that's what we're going with. Yeah, we're gonna call it like an emergency, like, you know, when you get those emergency broadcasts. That's what this is, but for Bond 25.
Right. There. In no world is this like immediate information that needs to get out to the public, but if you're a Bond fan, then maybe it is. But yeah, I mean, there's been a lot of stuff that's dropped within the past, like what is it, like 24 hours, 48 hours?
Honestly, it's been a bit of a trickle this whole week, but it's really intensified in the last 24 hours. Where we've gotten like confirmations of stuff we've heard all week. So yeah. Very nice. Like if you couldn't have written it any better, it's like a perfect arc.
Oh, it really is. It kind of the way everything is kind of panned out. Yeah. And we have a little bit of just some fun information of our own that we can share.
That's right.
I recently sat down with Hugo Weaving to talk about his new film, Mortal Engines. And I asked him some questions that we'll get into a little bit later on. Nothing huge, but it was just kind of like cool to hear where he was coming from. So we'll get to that later on in the show. But it does pertain to Bond. So definitely stay tuned for that little tidbit at the end. But without further ado, Brody, let's get into this news here.
Absolutely. Okay. Yeah. So we'll start with these are kind of in a random order, but we'll start with the biggest news of the day. Well, not the biggest news. I would say the second biggest news of the day, which came earlier this week. We got a reporting from Variety's Kristopher Tapley, and he sort of suggested that Academy Award-winning Swedish director of photography Linus Sandgren, who you might know from La La Land and First Man, he's done a bunch of other stuff as well. Like what was that? What was that other movie he did?
Yes, I know so many of his films. I mean,
he did.
I probably should, but
high profile films in any case.
He's great. Well, he just sign on to do Dune, or was that someone else?
That was someone else. Yeah,
that was someone else. Yeah. Why would he be signing on to do Dune when he's in Dubai?
So that was the same tweet from Kristopher Tapley.
Yeah, that's right.
But in this tweet, he basically announced that Linus would be joining Bond 25, and the tweet reads, Linus Sandgren is shooting the next Bond. Then today, that was corroborated and confirmed by IndieWire, who cited Sandgren himself as the source. And so it's pretty much a done deal that Sandgren will be working alongside Cary Fukunaga as the director of photography for this film. So, Griffin, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I love this. First of all, I'm not overly familiar with his work, but I mean, just based off of La La Land and First Man, boom, you got me in there. Especially First Man, which had such a intensity to it, and the look of the film was certainly unique, definitely documentary-esque in some accounts, but especially when he would tackle the liftoff scenes, the moon landing sequence, just some of the more intimate moments. It was so incredibly well done. So I'm ecstatic about this, and I mean, he's got a keen eye. I mean, La La Land, we were talking about it, uses a lot of color, so it's like he definitely has some variety to his style, which is always good. So I'm curious as to what the look him and Fukunaga are going to come up with for for Bond 25. It is interesting though, because I think for a little bit there we could have maybe speculated that Cary Fukunaga himself was going to shoot the film, having shot Beasts of No Nation himself. So like that could have been a little bit of speculation there, but
he's probably got a lot on his plate with this.
I was about to say it was probably very unlikely, given the fact that this is a much higher budget film, more high profile, more money. And just moving pieces.
I can't
involved.
imagine the Broccoli's okaying him to do that much.
Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm all in for this. I really, really like it. And, hell yeah. Let's go Linus Sandgren.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I'm of the same mind. The movie I was blanking on before was American Hustle.
That's right. Yeah,
he works with Damien Chazelle and David O. Russell. Frequently.
Yeah. I mean, you look at all those films really, and they all have a very nice look to it. I mean, of course, he shoots on film, I would imagine, because all of those films, I believe, all of those movies were shot on film, so that bodes well for Bond 25 to be shot.
Do we know
on
what?
film.
Do we know, because it was television? But do we know what True Detective was shot on?
I don't. I don't know what Cary Fukunaga's take is on film versus digital.
Yeah,
but
I think that'll be like the deciding factor ultimately.
Right, for sure. I the way I look at it, if they can shoot film, and it's a Bond film, they definitely have the budget to shoot film.
Yeah.
If they can shoot film, then they probably will. So I am very much looking forward to that, to be honest with you. I just... For me personally, there's nothing that comes close to looking like film. You can get really close with digital, but you can, at least for me personally, I can tell the difference, and I always love, like, you look at any of Nolan's films, that they were shot on film. They just have that, like, that depth, that contrast, the richness of it.
Like a fidelity to it, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So with Linus Sandgren, given his background working with Damien Chazelle and Damien Chazelle shooting on film, I'm very excited for that. I think this also could bode well for some incredible IMAX sequences, given what he did with First Man. So maybe him and Fukunaga are working on some great, big screen, like, you gotta see this on the biggest screen you possibly can, sequences in terms of action.
I would
and
hope
whatnot.
So. That gets me so excited. You just saying that now got me very excited.
Yeah, well, I mean, like, it makes sense, especially because, I mean, last episode we were talking about Cary Fukunaga saying he's kind of working on some set pieces, and he wants to do something that will impress people, and you get a DP like this who is more than capable, who has really shot, like, massive scale sequences with First Man.
The moon landing sequence from First Man.
The moon landing is
probably the most impressive sequence I've seen this year.
Oh yeah, absolutely. From musical, cinematography, directorial, however the fuck you want to say it, but yeah, no, I agree. And so you have all of these things, and you put them together in a blender, and you're like, yes, I like it. We'll get an incredible looking Bond film. So I am all in on this. And the last thing I'll say on the matter is I think we'll get a much different looking Bond film than the previous ones, because we had Hoyt van Hoytema, which his style, you can tell it's Hoyt van Hoytema, but at the same time he was trying to kind of replicate what Roger Deakins did in Skyfall, not to the same extent, but you could see little inklings of that in there. And so I'm kind of just excited to move away from the aesthetic of the Sam Mendes films, because even though I do like them, I think Spectre was a little drab for me. I still think it's a gorgeous looking film, but at the same time, I just kind of want to see something else.
I think I see where you're coming from. Spectre's color palette is definitely very washed out, very almost like sepia tone in parts.
Yes.
So I can definitely, even especially that opening scene is very, like, has a very orangey kind of tint to it.
Right. Which is, I think it looks good. Like, it looks great. Cinematography in Spectre is excellent. It's just like, I'm kind of, probably like you're going to say, I'm ready for something new.
No, for sure. I think, like, part of my thought process on that is, I think what Sam Mendes and Roger Deakins decided to go with in Skyfall is kind of the perfect aesthetic for a Bond film, in that it is vibrant and colorful and rich, and for having seen La La Land, that is, I know that that Sandgren is capable of that. So that gets me very excited because I mean I love the muted colors of First Man. It's a lot more realistic, but I would love to see him do something more La La Land-esque in terms of the vibrancy,
the color palette. Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
Daniel Craig's Bond is more grounded, for sure. But I mean, I think his first 3 films are quite colorful.
I was about to say, I think Casino Royale has a nice balance of colors, and
even
it's
Quantum of Solace
arguably
has, go ahead.
Well, I was just saying it has a nice balance of colors, and it's arguably the darkest film in the series.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think and they all 3 of them. I mean, even Spectre, like they all look beautiful, but especially those first 3 have that rich color palette, and that's kind of what I'm hoping for. It's a very superficial thing, but it's a James Bond movie. We're not watching, 12 Years a Slave. I watch them for the beauty of them and also the spectacle, and so something a little more exciting and like with some more visual flair would be very appreciated with this entry.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I completely agree.
But yeah, so I guess that does it for that story, which now we move into what is actually the biggest story of the day, and possibly the biggest story we're going to get for a little while.
Probably for the rest of the year, honestly.
Probably, yeah. I was about to call you out for that, but then I realized there's only a couple of days left, so I was like, good point. But no. So that story, and the reason you probably clicked on this podcast video wherever you're listening, is that Lea Seydoux is set to return, and so originally this story came from the Daily Mail's Baz Bamigboye, who essentially did an interview with Cary Fukunaga, or got on the record comments from Cary Fukunaga, confirming that Lea Seydoux would return to the franchise, and Cary offered a very concise comment saying Lea will be returning. So you can't get more straightforward than that.
Yeah, I mean, it's coming straight from the horse's mouth.
Yeah, the only issue was when this first got announced is, I mean, Baz Bamigboye is a very reputable source in terms of Bond news. He's very much an insider when it comes to that kind of thing. But the Daily Mail isn't exactly the most trustworthy source. So people are a little reticent to fully get behind that. This wouldn't be the first time that someone would have lied about talking to, a director or something like that.
Yeah,
but
for sure.
Then today we got confirmation, or tomorrow, depending on when you're listening. We got confirmation from Variety's Justin Kroll, who corroborated Bamigboye's comments, stating that that a source had confirmed the story to Variety. So this is really exciting. Obviously, the big talking point when it comes to this is what this could mean for Bond 25. Obviously, it'll be a continuation of Spectre's story, and Madeline's role. People are sort of speculating what that could mean. So I'm not going to preface this anymore. Griffin, what do you think is going to happen? What are your thoughts on her returning? Yeah, just give me your straight thoughts. I've been discussing this all day on Twitter. So
yeah, absolutely. I'm of two mindsets here. One, I like that they're going to actually bring her back, because I think she kind of got the shaft in Spectre. They didn't really explore her or Bond's relationship as much as, or nearly as much as they should have. And it's very easy to draw the On Her Majesty's Secret Service
and people have been
comparison, which is literally what everyone has been doing. I don't know. I think it's great, and it'll be really cool that she'll be the first legitimate Bond girl. I'm not talking about what's her name?
Sylvia Trench.
Sylvia Trench. Yeah, I'm not talking about Sylvia Trench kind of Bond girl. I'm talking about legitimate Bond girl to return. Yeah, in a film, which is cool. And you know what? This really opens the door for them to do a deep exploration of their relationship at the current point in time. Because obviously some time will have passed. Bond left the service, so I kind of catching up with them, seeing their relationship would be something that we have never seen in a Bond film before. So that interests me. My only worry, and you and I share the same belief here, and have the same worry, is that they will, for all intents and purposes, fridge her within the first 10 or so minutes, or maybe even before the opening credits of the film, which at this point in time, I feel like it's just too obvious of a thing to do. We've already seen it done in On Her Majesty's Secret Service. That's an excellent film. We don't need to see another version of that. Something I've always loved about the Bond films is that they've never remade previous films. They don't go back and remake, the stuff they've done before. Because we already have them. And for all intents and purposes, aside from like films like, Octopussy, A View to a Kill, or whatever your thoughts are, even some of the, like Die Another Day, I don't know where I was going with that. Basically saying like, even though they're bad, even though right,
as previous,
I was basically saying like, even though they're bad, we've just kind of accepted the fact that the series has its ups, it has its downs. We don't need to go back and remake anything, and especially remake arguably, if you're talking to some people, the best film in the entire franchise. Now, that's not the case for me. I don't think that's the case for you, but it is in the top 5. I think we can
undeniably the most
state
important
that.
Bond film. Probably
Absolutely.
Ever. Yeah.
And regardless of what you think of George Lazenby's acting, the film as a whole is excellently done. There is no need to remake that film.
That's the thing. What are you going to get out of a remake of it? Because
you're just going to get the same story with modern technology.
Yeah. I mean, like, I don't... Yeah, well,
there's no point in it. Absolutely. And I know we were talking about the fact that if you watch the trailers for Spectre, it was almost like Sam Mendes was trying to do like a reverse, subverting your expectations version of On Her Majesty's Secret Service. And it just like basically fell flat. And I don't want them to go back to that well. I used to think it would be a cool idea, but now I'm just of the mindset, do something different. And so... Yeah, I know you put up a poll, right, on the Twitter page, and I kind of want to address that poll because I think that they should ultimately split because Bond doesn't end up with someone because it's just not in the nature of who he is. But I want them to take a page, believe it or not, I want them to take a page out of Mission Impossible's playbook and
That's what I was saying last week.
Yeah, do the right thing and just have the two separate. And I think it would work best for the character. And best for Madeline as well. Now, when they do that, I have no idea. But that's kind of my whole thought process on the matter. I'm glad that she's coming back. I'm curious as to if there will be another Bond girl in the film, or if they'll maybe separate at the end of the movie. So that is one thing I'm still curious about. But
yeah, that's kind of where I'm at on that as well. If you've spoken to me on Twitter, if you've read any of my replies on Twitter today, it's pretty clear where I fall on that. But yeah, essentially, so like going back to what you said before about fridging, for anyone who doesn't know, fridging is a trope that essentially it comes from a Green Lantern comic book where they killed who was Green Lantern at the time? Kyle Rayner's girlfriend by. Like, she was like, he found her in a fridge and she was dead. And essentially, it's a trope that it means when you kill off a male protagonist's girlfriend for dramatic purposes, like to basically to develop the male character and at the expense of the female character. Yeah. And now, so yeah, essentially, that's what I think would ultimately be the result of killing her in the opening scene. Because I've seen a lot of people talk about killing her in the
it would literally.
Sequence. It would be we have such a little, so little of a relationship with Madeline because, like you said, she's pretty undercooked in Spectre. So yeah, killing her off immediately would have no emotional resonance.
Not only that, but it just kind of in a funny sense, it would almost be like playing into the parody that Deadpool did.
Oh,
Deadpool
yeah, for sure.
2 did.
Yeah, no, exactly.
Which we've already seen. Right, we've already seen Bond play into parodies unintentionally, and it's not very good.
Well, yeah, that's the thing, though, but not only, because we're talking about remaking Majesties, and I can see where some people are coming from, like, they want a new version of Majesties in this current continuity, because it is such an important story, in the Bond canon. I get that. But for me personally, and the way I see it, the story of like Bond and Vesper in Casino Royale pretty much covers that ground pretty thoroughly. And we got a revenge story in Quantum of Solace, and we've seen repeatedly, even in the Sam Mendes films, Bond isn't quite over Vesper yet. Like, you had that, like, my favorite moment in Spectre is when he looks at the I think I mentioned this last episode, but he looked at the tape from when I guess they were blackmailing Vesper when he's in Mr. White's little cave.
The Le American.
He looks at it and then he throws it away, and you can sort of, Daniel Craig sort of sells you that moment, and it's a really, really nice, like, moment of pathos for him. And I don't see the narrative purpose in saying, okay, well, now there's another dead woman, because don't forget, M also died in his arms in Skyfall, so we've got a lot of Bond mourning women, and
we don't need any more of it.
Woman,
yeah,
M just even if M hadn't been a woman in that movie, just Bond mourning people in his life. At what purpose does it serve to end Craig's tenure by doing the same thing again? I think what the movie should be focused on is propelling Bond's arc forward from where we started in Casino Royale, but not repeating what we already have seen in Casino Royale and Quantum of Solace.
Right, and if we're to take Cary Fukunaga's comments from what we said last week episode of him, wrapping up the story that began in Casino Royale, this doesn't seem like the logical thing to do, because then it just moves him back to square one. Exactly, and that was part of the problem with Spectre, is that it basically ignored a bunch of stuff that happened in Skyfall and then did them again, like with M's whole storyline with C. That whole storyline was basically the same storyline from Mallory and M in the previous movie. It's not. I feel like I shouldn't have to say this, but treading water isn't fun when you're watching an adventure movie. So I don't see a point. It doesn't do anything for Bond. Personally, I would love to see them part ways. I mentioned this because we saw this on Twitter. I made a poll. Essentially, we had kill Madeline, have them break up mutually, have her dump Bond, or have them end up together. And what's interesting, I found interesting anyway, is as of right now, it's still live, so if you want to go vote, go ahead. Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
But maybe make me look like a fool. Go change the results. But so far, like 48% of people want her to die, but interestingly enough, the remaining, I guess, 52% of people don't want her to die, and they either want them to leave, like split mutually, be dumped, or end up together. So it's fair to say that at least our audience is fairly split on this so far. I just all I would say is to both sides, but especially to the I don't want to make it sound like I'm right and you're wrong, but I have a real sense that they're not going to kill her, because
it's just way too obvious. First of all,
obvious. They wouldn't have announced her. It was very obvious that Blofeld was going to what's his face? Oberhauser was Blofeld. That was super obvious, but they at least tried to cover it up. You know what I mean? There was no attempt to cover this up. Cary Fukunaga literally spoke to a tabloid reporter and said, "Yeah, she's coming back." So I don't think they know they're not fooling anyone. They're not fooling fans, and they also know that at this point in time, that doing that trope after it's been parodied in Deadpool, after it's been you've got this whole Me Too thing going on in Hollywood. I think it would be incredibly stupid for them to say we're gonna do it and we're gonna make it super obvious that we're doing it. I completely agree with that, but I do want to pose a question to you real quick. Yeah. What if they didn't kill her until the very end of the film? I still wouldn't like that. It's just on principle. Yeah. On principle, I think it's on principle.
Earned.
Okay. Even if they did earn it throughout the film by making us fall in love with Madeline, I'd rather see. I honestly, if I was talking about, I've mentioned this again on Twitter. I'm going to keep mentioning Twitter, by the way.
Go follow it. Go follow that account. He's doing great things there.
Twain Pod. But what I would say is you've got these two characters, right? You've got Bond and you've got Madeline, and they are both essentially using each other. You've got Bond who's using Madeline to sort of the way Bond uses all of the women in his life post Vesper to sort of distract himself from the pain. And on the other hand, you've got Madeline, who's using Bond to escape this life that her father's line of work sort of forced her into. And I mean, if you've ever been in a relationship, when you're both using each other, it's not typically the most healthy relationship. So I personally would love to see them explore that and show, like, because Bond is not built for relationships, as we know as fans. He's just really not the type. And when he does try to go into a relationship, like with Tracy or like with Vesper, it ends in tragedy in one way or another. So rather than just skip to the tragedy, I would rather have them tackle this sort of this complex issue that Bond is working through, and this complex issue that Madeline is working with, and perhaps end the story on a sort of a melancholic parting of the ways, kind of like Gala Brandt in Moonraker, or even Tiffany Case at the beginning of From Russia with Love, the novel. Just having them either break up or be dumped or whatever. I just think that would be much more satisfying, and then you could end this story on, you know, Bond moving on. Bond has moved on from Vesper. He's moving on from Madeline. He's a new person. And then in the next movie, he will literally be a new person. Yeah,
that's exactly. You know, and it perfectly sets up the entry of whoever's going to come in for Bond 26.
And I'm not saying that they should do exactly my idea. I just think, I think there's plenty of potential. I don't think killing her is the only thing you can do with a returning Bond girl. That seems really narrow-minded and boring. I
agree.
think there is so much potential. We've never had a returning Bond girl, and as we've mentioned on this podcast before, Barbara's been trying to make that happen for years, basically.
And so now it finally happened. So and now that it's happening, it's another reason why I feel, because of Barbara's passion about it, I can't see her just offing her within the first 10 minutes, or even in the film in general.
Honestly,
I mean, maybe at the end if it's earned, but I still don't see that happening. So I really do think.
Plus, I don't know if just come to separation. I don't know if that ending would work today for audience, because you ended Majesties on that down note,
right?
And even then, people did not take it well. But I think I don't know if they would end Craig's run on such a bum note,
on a tragedy, because every single film has ended in a tragedy. Well, except for Spectre. Spectre, he kind of rides off into the sunset. But other than that, he's always had like a kind of rough ending to his films. Even like Quantum of Solace, where he's kind of moving on. It was a bittersweet thing, It was a bittersweet thing because of like how much Vesper meant to him. So I agree. I feel like have them separate, but have him become a new person by the end of the film, in order to open the gates for legitimately, like literally, the new actor who's going to play Bond.
Yeah.
So,
and I mean, and this is a really great way that people keep talking about how you can address Bond's relationship to women in the 21st century. I think this is a great way to do it, by like
a learning experience. It could be a learning experience for him.
Have him learn from a relationship, have him actually address the issues, because like he's been using Vesper as an excuse for like a decade now. So, which is not an unreasonable, not an unrealistic thing. People do that, especially after like trauma. So,
well, and it doesn't make it right.
It doesn't make it right, but
that's a hurdle that they have to get over. Yeah,
exactly. But it makes it real, and it grounds Bond's journey in real character drama, and you can still have like a twisting a twisting spy caper going on, and you can have fun action scenes. And I think we keep going back to this, but it really is a good example for a lot of the things we're talking about. You look at Mission Impossible Fallout, which managed to do all of these things simultaneously, and so I kind of scoff in the face of anyone who says it's not possible, because you can wrap up. I mean, talk about a character no one gave a shit about. No one cared a shit about Ethan Hunt's wife or whatever she ended up being. But they managed to make you care in that movie, and I think you can do that with Madeline. You can make us care. You can make her a fully fledged character. If they manage to make her a fully fledged character, I think Craig will have the best gallery of well-rounded Bond women. Without a doubt.
I
mean, he probably already does, but in terms of just
definitely
really
the most layered,
multifaceted characters. Yeah, no, exactly. But yeah, we've kind of talked about this for long enough, so how about we move on to the next story, which is kind of related actually, because it's tied into the Justin Kroll Variety report. But in that report, there was also a second paragraph that talked about a general casting call, if you will. They're looking for 2 women and a villain. And Kroll reported that, Eon is looking for 2 other actresses. One would play an MI6 agent who works with Bond, and another a mystery woman, as well as the Bond villain. And then alleged insiders added to that, saying that Rami Malek, who you may have seen in Mr. Robot and in Bohemian Rhapsody this year, was being eyed for the villain role, but his schedule with the last season of Mr. Robot, which shoots in March to July, I believe, makes it unlikely that he'll be able to get to take the gig, even if Eon offered him the part. But it is interesting that they are looking for a new villain. For me personally, it tells me that Blofeld may not be the villain in this next one.
Right. I mean, he could still be in it, just have a very small
role.
role.
Yeah, not the primary antagonist. It is interesting. What do you take from these casting call for women and for a villain?
Well, the women one is really interesting because I think we heard a while back, it was like heavily rumored that they were looking for a female character, or I'm sorry, a female actress to play a fellow MI6 agent, which I always like when Bond teams up with people to complete missions and such.
Absolutely.
Even if it's for a short period of time, it's still really cool to see because you don't get it a whole lot, and it's something different.
Craig's worked with any English women at all.
No. Well, absolutely. I mean, I just look at Tomorrow Never Dies. We just talked about it last week. Him teaming up with Wei Lin was awesome at the end. Yeah. Like I want to see more of that stuff, whether it be with a female agent or without a female agent. I don't know, but this is also really, really interesting. Because I start to question, how does Madeline fit into all of this? Exactly. We're going to have a mystery woman. Yeah. We're going to have an MI6 agent. And then we have Madeline. And I'm assuming the mystery woman is going to be someone who he maybe has like a fling with. I could be wrong. She could be a villainess or something like that. But
or even just like an ally who is not a Bond girl per se.
Right.
Lead,
yeah, for sure. But yeah, it just starts. I start just kind of wondering. Well, maybe Madeline will be gone like halfway through the film. How are they going to work that? Well, here's the other thing. Maybe we're looking too deep into the Madeline character coming into the film. Maybe it's literally just a very small role. Maybe they've already split by the time that 25 starts, and we just get a very small glimpse of her character.
Flashbacks almost, yeah.
Yeah, either flashbacks or just a brief encounter or of some sort. Yeah. She's still returning.
Not flashbacks, but yeah.
Right. Yeah, I mean, like she's still returning, but she's really not going to be in the film. And so that's another route they could take, which would be equally as interesting. Honestly, as long as they don't kill her off, I'm okay. As far as the Rami Malek thing, well, I mean, the dude's kind of just... we've already known he's a great actor. I mean, Mr. Robot, he gives exceptional. Mr. Robot, he gives exceptional performances, and there's a reason he's been nominated. At least I think he's been nominated for that role. And so, with Bohemian Rhapsody, he transformed into Freddie Mercury, and people were all like, oh, I mean, my God, he just got a Golden Globe nomination for playing Freddie Mercury. And so he is like the hot item right now in terms of acting. And so it makes sense why they would consider someone like this, especially Rami Malek has like such an interesting intensity to him when you see him in roles.
He does,
you see it in his eyes, and like I could 100% see him being a great Bond villain.
I see him as like a kind of like a Max Zorin, like psychotic type.
Yeah. Oh my God, that's actually a perfect analogy there, because Max Zorin, surface level, seems like a pretty normal guy, but you start watching him in conversations, and you're like, this guy's fucking nuts.
Like
I could see this. I could see the exact same thing happen with Rami Malek. So I love that he's being considered, because truthfully, that could mean he could pop up in a Bond film later down the road. It is unfortunate that the schedules do not align, but in terms of the whole Blofeld thing, I still think there's an opportunity for him to pop up in the film. Maybe not as the central antagonist, but maybe he's the guy pulling the strings. Maybe we get a scene where Bond visits him in prison. which would be very funny because it'd be like Austin Powers and he has to get information out of him in order to complete the mission he's actually on. God damn it, Austin Powers, you just fucking hell. But
you could have referenced like Silence of the Lambs or something like that.
well, you could have, but I mean, Bond, Austin Powers, they're kind of like, it's, you know.
Hopefully it's more Silence of the Lambs than it is.
Well, I would hope so, but
Austin
at the
Powers.
same time, you know, I don't know. I'm still of the mindset where it would be cool to see Christoph Waltz back, but I'm not going to lose sleep over it. I think it's fine. Mainly just because I really didn't like the direction they took his character in Spectre. I thought Waltz was good, but like the way his character was written was just kind of meh. So if they decide to just like, you know, scrap him for the Craig era, that's fine. Maybe get a new Blofeld with a new Bond. That whole thing. So yeah, I think those are really just my thoughts on the matter. It's really interesting stuff here, though. I do like the direction that this film is headed in.
Yeah, I think what's interesting about the Rami Malek thing for me is that it kind of, even if he doesn't end up taking the role, it kind of tells you the direction they're going in with this villain. You know,
Yeah.
like they're going for someone younger, they're going for someone intense. Presumably, I mean, this could be all wrong. They could just maybe have just wanted him, but by the sounds of it, it sounds like that kind of a role. And then in terms of like Christoph Waltz, I want to go back to that for a second.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I have been a big advocate for Blofeld coming back. I have a problem with the sibling thing that they did with him in Spectre, but I thought
so dumb. Yeah.
very dumb. But I think Christoph Waltz played the role fairly well. I think he delivered his lines well. I think he was suitably like simmering. There's like a simmering kind of rage to him as Blofeld that I really liked, and I would like to see more of. Even if it wasn't a supporting role, the capacity. I think the problem, and this is I mean, the problem is already evident because we've mentioned it several times over several podcasts, but the problem is where Spectre left off is in a very similar position to where Rogue Nation left off. So the problem is now Bond 25 has to do, like has to pick up from where Fallout picked up, but do it differently because they basically left off at the because those movies are very similar.
They are very similar.
They basically left their characters in very similar positions. So
to be fair, I feel like that obviously the one thing I want them to borrow from Fallout is just not fridging Madeline, but the less they kind of borrow from that film and the more they separate it while still kind of connecting to Spectre, I think the better.
For sure. That's the only thing. I wasn't saying they should copy Fallout. I was just saying
No.
It's interesting
I
that
know.
it's kind of a conundrum. I'm sure Cary Fukunaga's thought about it in that they really are in a very a precarious position where they have been both films left their characters in very similar places.
Well, you never know. I mean, he could ultimately just be making the Bond film he's always wanted to make, and it's not as connected to Spectre as we are thinking, you know. But at the same time, it does right. It does kind of tie up it ties up the Craig era, but it might not be as connected to Spectre, which truthfully I think could be a good thing because we are both pretty vocal about our disappointment of Spectre, and I think upon rewatching it some more, the problems become even more glaring. So
I think if and this is going to be a very divisive thing for me to say, and this is very tangentially related to what we're talking about, but I know a lot of people are really reticent to suggest retcons and stuff like that. And I wouldn't. I would certainly say focus on making a good story and don't focus on trying to correct the issues with the previous movie.
Sure.
Because that's how you kind of end up in like a DC cinematic universe situation where you're just every film is reacting to the previous film. But at the same time, if they find a way to make Madeline a more compelling character retrospectively, or if they find a way to, make the whole, connect all the connections between the previous films a little more palatable, a little more like if they explained, Silver didn't work for Spectre, he was just funded by them or something like that. In just like an off comment, I wouldn't hate that just because it would probably make me like Spectre a little bit more just in retrospect.
For sure, yeah.
And overall, like a rising tide lifting all boats. But again, I don't want that to be the focus of the movie because that's pretty faulty filmmaking. But I wouldn't be opposed if, like, hey, they bring Blofeld back and the brother thing isn't a big deal anymore because it's really not. They're not really brothers anyway, so it's just like never mentioned again. Like, I would be okay with them sort of retconning previous stuff just to make things a little like less egregious in Spectre. But going to the other two things real quick. I love the idea of there being an MI6 agent. They sort of toyed with the CIA agent being Bond's partner in Spectre. Yeah. And but then she ended up being like a turncoat. And so I wonder if this is going to be a misdirect where like the MI6 character is actually like shady, kind of like Miranda Frost style. Yeah. But I guess maybe there's been a little too much of that like with C and with just a couple of like other. Actually, I think C's the only one, but still. C. I guess you have what was the name of her bodyguard? M's bodyguard in. Craig Mitchell.
Craig Mitchell. Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Yeah.
So you've got like a couple of examples of rogue MI6 agents. So maybe it's wise not to do that, but it's interesting. Mystery woman. I love a good mystery woman. I can already see her like trouncing around at like a casino with her long dress or something. That sounds great.
Well, and you know what it makes me think of? It makes me think of, and I always forget her name because she's really not in the film a whole lot. The girl from Skyfall, Silva's. Do you remember her name? I'm sorry. Yes. She is literally so mysterious when we first meet her. Oh, it's like great. It's kind of eerie.
Yeah. Go ahead.
That first, well, I was just saying that first time when we meet her is like super eerie. She's so mysterious. I love how like the she's smoking the cigarette. It's like the dragon puff coming out.
It's coming out of her nose.
Oh my god, it's excellent. But that's what my mind goes to when I think of mystery Bond woman. You know what I'm saying?
No, same here. Yeah, with the black lipstick and the.
Oh god, it really was pretty like eerie. Like I don't know why, but it was just like this girl's unsettling. And yeah,
I talk about an underrated performance. She sold
really
that
underrated. Yeah,
in one scene, like. We got that she was, she had a dangerous past. She was incredibly scared, but putting on a brave face. Like, really phenomenal performance, making the most of a small part. But yeah. Anyway, that does it for that story, and we're going to move on real quick to another little tidbit.
From Mr. Justin Kroll, right? Or no, I'm sorry. This is not from
This
Kroll.
is Bamigboye.
Okay,
so we're jumping back to the Daily Mail real quick.
Daily Mail, all right.
Because this one's a little more shaky than the previous like sort of confirmation, just because Daily Mail is a little less, not to discredit Bamigboye, but the Daily Mail is far less credible source.
There are tiers.
Variety.
The Daily Mail is a tabloid, and the Variety is a legitimate publication who covers the industry. You know.
Yeah, and then the Variety just doesn't tend to publish things unless they know for sure, and Daily Mail will publish anything. Yeah, so that's there's that on that, but yeah, so Bamigboye, I'm going to have a stroke saying that name so many times. But he confirmed in his little conversation with Cary Fukunaga that Ralph Fiennes, Ben Whishaw, and Naomi Harris would be returning as MQ and Moneypenny, respectively. Cary seemed eager to work with the returning crew and the rest of the British talent that's likely to fill in the cast, saying, "You have some of the best actors in the world here. Why wouldn't I have the best coming back?" So that's really great. It's great. I mean, we kind of knew that M was coming back, Q was coming back, Moneypenny's coming back. They're just staples of like the sort of the Whitehall crew. Interesting that Rory Kinnear as Bill Tanner is not listed. But, right. What do you think of the returning MI6 crew?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think it's a no-brainer. Goddamn, I love Cary Fukunaga. The thing I love about his comments is he's like, well, duh. Like, I mean,
no, exactly.
It's like the thing that we're all thinking. We're like, well, yeah, you have Ralph Fiennes, Ben Whishaw, and Naomi Harris.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't you bring them back? And so I always assumed that they were going to be coming back, especially because they have become staples of the Craig era. You know, Ralph Fiennes really solidified himself as an excellent M inspector, believe it or not. Actually, I thought all of the MI6 crew got a massive bump from Spectre, which is...
Ben Whishaw has been like... I love Ben Whishaw. I was I'm surprised how much people have taken to him because he is so different from the old Q.
He is, but he's so modern and with the times. It kind of goes back to, you know, the whole Bond adapting with the times. I think that's definitely the case with Q, and Ben Whishaw is just an excellent actor who brings, weirdly enough, a lot of like awkward charisma to the role that I
it's
just
very charming.
he's a very, very charming Q, and I honestly I wish they would keep him on for whoever is on next, carry that legacy of continuing on with the same Qs.
Absolutely. I would say Naomi Harris has also been fantastic as Moneypenny.
She's excellent. Yeah,
she and Craig have a very like cheeky, playful kind of banter that
it's it's like almost as good as Samantha Bond, because I think it's like the next progression of that, you know. No, I was just saying, like I feel like Naomi Harris and Craig is like the next logical progression from where we had Samantha Bond and Pierce Brosnan.
I completely agree. Yeah, because it's a little less like sexually charged.
Yeah, it's not as sexually charged.
But that, like you'd think taking away the sexual like charge from the Moneypenny thing. Not that there is no sexual tension between them.
Well, I mean, my God, obviously the whole shaving sequence. Yeah, right.
Is like,
or when he calls her inspector and she's like with a guy, you know.
Yeah, and he gets a little jealous. Like I kind of like that. Not to say there is no sexual tension between them, but it is less played up than like say Lois Maxwell very obviously wanting to jump Sean Connery's bones. I mean, who doesn't? But but yeah, I think they adapted that. Both Q and Moneypenny for while we're at it. But Moneypenny, yeah, they have a very like witty, sharp sort of dynamic, and I think even though they sort of overplayed the MI6 crew a little bit too much in Spectre,
they definitely did. Yeah.
I think it was still not so. It didn't feel so bad because they were playing those characters so well, and they did feel so right. So I mean, I'm glad they're coming back, and I'm glad that Cary sort of just shrugged it off as being a no-brainer.
Right. It's I love. Tanner. Yeah. Well, before I get into that, I just once again want to reiterate, I just love the common sense of Cary Fukunaga. He just gets it. But in terms of Tanner, it's really interesting that he didn't mention Rory Kinnear, but at the same time, I don't think Tanner has had like the. You know, like he's
not
one
as big as those other three.
He's not as big as those other characters. So I mean, naturally, the way I look at it is Bamigboye asked him, well, yeah. So are we going to get M, Q, and Moneypenny returning? And then Fukunaga was just kind of like, well, yeah, of course we're going to get them returning. I don't look at it as him like purposefully excluding Tanner. I just feel like it's one of those things like, yeah, we'll get the MI6 crew back together, which for me includes Tanner. So whether Tanner is even in the film is another question. I mean, they might not even have him, but I always liked his role in the Craig films. I really enjoyed. He was
because Tanner was like sort of underused in previous Bond iterations, and he became a real staple of Craig's like sort of crew.
Well, and Rory Kinnear is excellent in the role. He was always that nice like intermedium like the you know what I'm saying. He was a nice medium between
work friend.
Absolutely. He's like the great
like brilliantly.
Yeah, and he was kind of like the link between Bond and M whenever they would. Yeah, so it was just it's great stuff. So
that's the end of that stuff, and now we're getting to some a little more murky, speculative waters, I'll say, because we don't have any explicit news on this, but it is a little detail we noticed when reading the Justin Kroll Variety piece, which I'm back to that one. And in that piece, I thought it was interesting that Cary Fukunaga is now reportedly the one writing Bond 25. There's no like real announcement of it. It's just that in the article, Fukunaga is listed as the sole writer 2 times with no reference made to any other writers. It's interesting because in the Bamigboye article, he suggests that Purvis and Wade are still on board and that Cary Fukunaga is having major input, quote unquote, in the writing process, but isn't himself the writer, or at least not the sole writer. So in that case, it would be like sort of a Casino Royale situation with Paul Haggis.
Yeah.
But I don't know if I trust that just because it was not part of the... he like sort of goes over his conversation with Cary Fukunaga, and then after the jump, there's a bit of like a sort of... he's rounding up all the previous information that has been established or rumored about Bond 25, and in that he says Purvis and Wade are back. But that does sound a lot like a rumor we covered early on, where people just sort of assumed they were going with the Purvis and Wade script when I know I said John Logan, but John Hodges, like John Hodge left the project. So whether or not this is like, you know, what we sort of assumed was what was rumored, or whether or not like Cary Fukunaga is fully rewriting the script or just like, you know, retooling an existing script that they wrote, we can't really say. But it is interesting that Variety could not verify that detail and instead said that Cary Fukunaga is writing the project on his own.
Right.
So,
well, when they were looking for a replacement for Danny Boyle, they were looking for a writer-director, correct?
yes, exactly, yeah.
And that's what Cary Fukunaga is. So, I mean, like, the way I see it is...
at least rumored. They were rumored to be looking for a writer-director, yeah.
The way I see it is Bamigboye is playing it safe because he doesn't actually know, and he probably didn't ask the question, and so he just assumed that they were using the Purvis and Wade script, or Purvis and Wade were rewriting, or they were using some, you know, the central idea of the Purvis and Wade script, and Fukunaga was having major input, which means essentially he was telling them what to write. But to me, that doesn't make any sense because that's not who Fukunaga is as a filmmaker. I'm leaning more towards what Justin Kroll and Variety are saying, because that sounds more like what something Cary Fukunaga would do. Cary Fukunaga is not someone who wants to... I mean, he'll play ball with studios if he has to, but he's very much like the kind of filmmaker who wants to do it himself. You know what I'm saying? He wants to make what he wants to make. And I have a feeling that he was hired because, right. I mean, I'm sure Eon, when they were having conversations with him, pitched him like, listen, this is the idea we kind of have right now. And then I'm sure Fukunaga, you know, came back at it and he's like, okay, well, what if we do this kind of along the same lines you're thinking about, but it's a little different. And they were probably like, yeah, we love that. And then from that, so it's like it's still kind of going off of that central idea that may have been there all along, but ultimately it's Fukunaga's take on what's going on.
I think either way, Purvis and Wade probably will have a story credit.
They'll probably have a story credit. I do not think they're writing the script, though.
Me neither.
I don't.
I just have a strong feeling that they won't be, especially since they were responsible for a lot of the stuff that people did not like about Spectre. Although them writing kind of mediocre scripts has not stopped them from coming back in the past. So
no, well, and you know, you can look at it this way. We always say, "Oh, Purvis and Wade, they're coming back." What if they don't want to come back? What if they're just like, "Man, we're out of gas"?
It kind of sounds like they've been trying to get out of this for the longest time. After Skyfall, they said we're done, and then they dragged them back for Spectre.
And look what you got. So that's my thing is I don't understand why Eon would continue to go back to two people who clearly have exhausted their ideas in terms of this franchise, who kind of don't want to be there.
They're just company guys, I think.
They're just the workmen. They're the workmen of the Bond screenwriting universe, and I think, you know, just in general, it's time for Eon to move on from them. Find some fresh blood, or better yet, find a director who wants to write their own scripts, aka Cary Fukunaga, which is what you have, which is the direction I'm thinking that they're going in.
Right, and I mean, like, if this is true, and they are like, and Cary Fukunaga is writing and directing, like the sole writer on this, it is interesting that they were looking for a writer director after the departure of Danny Boyle. Maybe that indicates that they weren't entirely happy with the Purvis and Wade. I mean, they were willing to replace the Purvis and Wade script immediately with the potential of a John Hodges script, only to then not be happy with his script either. But I think their willingness to replace Purvis and Wade's script and then look for a writer-director maybe tells me that they're not completely satisfied with whatever they offered.
Right. They don't want to. Yeah, they don't want to, you know, have another Spectre debacle on their hand where, like, the ideas are there, but they couldn't quite get them to where they needed to be in order to have a successful narrative. So it's, to me, it just sounds like, like what you said, they're unsatisfied with what Purvis and Wade are doing. And they really want to make sure that Craig's final outing is the best it can be, which is good. It shows that they care and that they want to give him the proper send off, because we all know that that's the only, well, maybe not the only, but it's a pretty significant reason as to why Daniel Craig decided to come back.
Yeah, and it also shows that they're learning from their mistakes.
Absolutely,
And
which is exactly what you want from a studio.
And it may even indicate that Universal and Annapurna have been a very positive influence on the Eon team,
Sure,
as the new distributors. But yeah, so that's that story. And now we have one more big story before Griffin gets into his little interview news, and that is some Bond filming location news. And so this is kind of an exciting story because it broke earlier this week, and while at first it seemed a little shaky, a little sort of speculative, we've gotten some additional comments that have pretty much sold me on this being at least a possibility. And so without further ado, the story is that a Norwegian outlet has reported that a film dubbed B25 has applied for a 25% subsidy of cost, which is part of an initiative for filming in Norway. And now this story, because B25, yeah, what could it be? Sounds like it's Bond 25. But then this story was corroborated by the Norwegian film commissioner, Adrian Mitchell, who spoke with an Oslo newspaper the next day pretty much, saying the following: I can confirm that we have been in contact with representatives of the upcoming James Bond movie and that they want to record in Norway. So doesn't get much more definitive than that. Pretty obvious that they're looking to film in Norway, whether or not that's filming in Norway, standing in for somewhere else, or they're actually having Bond go to Scandinavia for the first time. Yeah, what do you think of this?
I dig it, truthfully. I mean, I'm always a fan of the snowy locations in the Bond films, and I'm praying to God this means we might get a ski chase, even if Craig doesn't want to do it. I don't care. I want at least one ski chase in the Craig area. Yeah, for real. But yeah, I mean, okay, to be realistic about it. They applied for a grant. That doesn't mean they're definitely going to film there, but it means that they're seriously considering it. Yeah. And you recently put up a poll.
The film is going to say. I was going to say that it must mean that the script wants them to go to Scandinavia in some capacity.
Right. And I mean, you recently put up a poll about locations that we haven't seen in a Bond film that we would like to see. I don't think Scandinavia was on there, was it?
No, I used that as a launching off point. So this would be the first time Bond goes to Scandinavia. Yeah. And there really aren't too many regions of the world where Bond has not visited yet.
Right.
But I sort of scrounged together a list and threw it up there.
See, to me, this is just it's really cool because, like you said, he's never been there before, and there's some beautiful locations in not just Norway but the entirety of Scandinavia that would make for great, locations for a Bond film and whatnot. So I am personally all for it. Just give me the damn ski chase and we'll be good.
Yeah. Oh my God. I'm excited because I love going back to what we were saying about the poll. I love the idea of Bond going somewhere we haven't been before.
Yeah.
There is just something very nice and refreshing about that. That's kind of how I felt when I watched Casino Royale for the first time, and it opens up after the title sequence in
Prague?
Africa.
Or Madagascar. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like, whoa, I've never really seen... I mean, we had one shot, a kind of a shitty soundstage of Winton Kid in South Africa, but... Bond himself has not gone to Africa, at least sub-Saharan Africa before, and Madagascar is probably the closest he's gotten to that, and it was just really cool, a nice change of scenery. Even I think Quantum of Solace did a good job of Bond's been to Central America before, but just doing it a little differently.
Bolivia was different.
Same with Skyfall going to China for the first time.
Oh, that was awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, no, so just really, really exciting. I mean, I guess you can count Hong Kong as China and Die Another Day, but that was very obviously a set. But
oh, yeah. Well, plus, I mean, well, yeah, no, you're right. Well, I mean, you look at something as simple as just looking at the game Bloodstone, which I'm currently playing through for the first time, if you can believe it. And the thing that really sticks out to me about that game is the locations they go to. You know, like
Yeah.
the game opens up when he's in Greece, and I'm like, Jesus, I've never seen Bond in Greece before. This is awesome.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah, and then they go from there to I think they go to Russia after that, which I mean we've seen him there a bunch of times. But then
yeah.
right, but then from there, when the aquarium stuff's happening, he goes to where is that? Do you remember? Was that in Japan?
It was somewhere in China, I think, right?
It was in China, but it was a different side of China that we hadn't seen before. That was like different from what we saw in Skyfall. So it's still new locations, and so that's something to me that's like
Southeast Asia somewhere. Yeah.
Right. Well, at least to me, that was just something that really stood out about that game that I appreciate. Well, and I think in that game they go to Africa, don't they?
Yeah,
eventually?
I believe the like final act, or at least the second to last, the penultimate like stage is in Africa.
Right. I would. I mean, with a game called Bloodstone, I mean, it makes sense, blood diamonds and whatnot. But I keep referring to that game as Blood Diamond because that's what comes to mind first.
I mean, you said we were talking about this before, and you said, "Oh, I wish they would go to some of the places from Blood Diamond," and I thought you were making a mistake, and I said, Bloodstone has some great locations.
Yeah.
No, I mean the film Blood Diamond.
Yeah. I was like, because I just keep interchanging them. But no, that brings up a good point. I'd love to see them go somewhere into like Central Africa, or maybe even the coast of Africa or stuff like that. Because you're right, we haven't seen that before. And we've seen so many other locations multiple times. So give us some fresh stuff. Yeah, I'm all for it. Scandinavia sounds great.
By judging by the poll, the winner was Australia, my wonderful home.
That's right.
So,
Yes, of course. That's another location that we haven't seen.
Yeah, I maybe... Just don't take any cues from Mission Impossible 2, because that was pretty bad representation. But, so very excited to see Bond heading to Norway. And I love getting I love getting location news, because then I can start imagining. My mind starts extrapolating. Like, I wonder what Bond's going to be doing in Norway. Is he going to go for like a car chase through through the mountains or something?
For sure.
Over an ice lake, like the Living Daylights or something. But so very, very exciting news on that. But that pretty much wraps up the Bond 25 news dump that we got this week. But Griffin has his own little piece of news, so take it away, Griffin.
Yeah, it's exclusive little thingy here. Really not too much to it. I wouldn't even consider it news, but it was interesting. So I got the opportunity to interview Hugo Weaving today. Today is December 7th. For those of you who don't know, I got a chance to interview him for Mortal Engines, which was through the movie news outlet, The Playlist. So I'm going to keep referring to this. If you guys want to check out the full interview I did with Hugo Weaving, go head on over to their article. It should be up, and we'll probably have a link in the description somewhere. But, of course, as a massive Bond fan, I had to pose the question, because I have thought this for years, and I'm at this end. I've also just kind of thought, wow, he's never been approached for this. This is kind of crazy. I have thought that Hugo Weaving would make the perfect Bond villain. He has that intensity to him. He's an incredible actor, amazing talent, and it just, to me, is such a logical fit for a Bond villain, considering his success in playing, villainous roles in the past and doing a great job with them, making memorable villains out of them. And so we're going to play a little clip here from the interview I had with Mr. Weaving, and you can get a sense for how he feels about the whole thing. So we'll roll the clip now. I'm a massive James Bond fan. I've always thought you would make the perfect Bond villain. Any interest?
Tell that to Barbara.
I wish I could. Cary Fukunaga's looking for a new villain, so maybe or he's looking
I'd love to play a James Bond villain. Absolutely love to.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for your time.
Cool, thank you. My
awesome.
pleasure.
So there you have it, guys. Mr. Hugo Weaving would consider playing a Bond villain if he were to be asked. Now, it is important to note that he didn't just out of the blue say this. I did pose the question to him in just a very fun and jovial manner. I don't want this to be taken as Hugo Weaving wants to be a Bond villain, just kind of taking it and running with it, because that's really not the case. I did pose the question, and so with me posing the question, he probably was a little more likely to say yes, but nonetheless, you can kind of get a sense for the excitement that he had when I asked the question. And I especially love when he's like, well, why don't you ask Barbara? Like, kind of throwing it in her court. And,
I love that he's on first name basis with Barbara Broccoli.
Right. Which, maybe they've had some conversations. Yeah, for sure. But it just kind of looks, it was very interesting to see that it would be something that he'd love to do, as he so said. And so, I don't know, Brody, what are your thoughts on this? And I kind of want to expand upon this a little bit more. What kind of Bond villain do you think would be awesome for Hugo Weaving to play?
Oh, man. Yeah, no, he is fantastic. Another great Australian talent.
Right, so keep going back there.
Keep coming back. It's almost like Australia is full with talented people. But
you're not wrong.
Yeah, no, he is. He's brilliant, and I love like a lot of the stuff that he's done. What kind of villain I would want him to play though? That's a toughie, because like I could see him playing like an Agent Smith type villain, obviously, because he has done it in the past. Like that very like cold, almost like mechanical, efficient type of Bond villain. But at the same time, I could also see him playing the kind of like he could play megalomaniacal.
I was about to say he'd be a great colorful megalomaniac.
Yeah, so I could see him play. I mean, his name is Hugo. I could see him playing Hugo Drax from the novel fairly well.
Yeah.
He just has like that when he's like he's deranged. Like, have you ever seen him smile? He has like that deranged smile.
He can make himself look like a madman. That's for sure.
Yeah, I'm specifically thinking of him from The Matrix. I'm sure his his regular smile is wonderful. But
oh my god, yeah, I mean, he was such a nice guy. I was just very very happy to like see that he was like kind of keen to
genuinely
answer that question. Yeah, he didn't just shut it down. He's like, absolutely, I'd love to do it. So
and he didn't want to avoid the curse, as so many actors seem to want to. Like, I don't want to talk about it just in case.
About anything, anything regarding James Bond.
Get my name out there.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Barbara Broccoli, if you are listening to this by any stretch of the imagination, well, regular, friend of the show, right? Barbara Broccoli.
Of course, yeah.
we're oh, no, that's bad, because if she does listen to this,
I'm sorry, Mrs. Broccoli.
No, but it is. It's just a fun little tidbit there. I'm glad I was able to talk to him, and I'm very, very happy that I was able to ask him that question and give you all a little insight into that. So seriously, go listen to my full interview with Mr. Hugo Weaving over at the playlist. There'll be a link in the description below. It was an absolute blast talking to him. Great guy. Yeah, it was great. It was awesome.
It's great, and that brings us to the end of another fine episode of The Words Are Not Enough.
So fine.
You got your Bond breaking news, quench that thirst. Griffin, where can people find you?
Where can they find me? Ooh, I like how we're turning the tables here.
Course,
you guys can find me on Twitter at Griff Schiller, where I am tweeting.
Wow.
Yeah, if you can believe
what a
kind of mind blowing. Yeah. Or you can go on, head on over to the Men vs. Movies Twitter account and follow us there for just more, movie, not necessarily related to Bond stuff.
Yeah, I mean, and then you can also check out the Men vs. Movies YouTube channel if you're interested in watching Griffin do movie reviews. I'm sure our audience loves movies if they're into Bond. So,
yeah, of course, I would assume so.
I would hope so. And I mean, if you're on the YouTube channel right now, go subscribe.
Good on you. There you go.
And if you want to find me, you can find my personal handle at Brody Saravelli, or you can check out the Words Are Not Enough official Twitter page, because it is a riot and a half, and I'm having some fun with it. It is at TwainPod, TWANE pod. And yeah, we're doing polls sporadically. We're talking about news. We're talking about just anything. If you're already subscribed, I am definitely not averse to replying and discussing things that I either agree or disagree with you with. So come on over. It's a fun time. But yeah, so check us out.
Yeah, and be sure to subscribe to the podcast on iTunes or
Right.
Spotify, wherever you listen to podcasts, and leave us a rating and a review that really helps the show get noticed in the larger sense. But if you're not a podcast person, you can, like Brody mentioned, check out the show on the Men vs. Movies YouTube channel. So you go to the Words Are Not Enough Twitter page, and all the links are there.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely. Well, I think that's going to do it for this show, guys, and hopefully you got your Bond fix. I know we sure did, and until next time, take care.